What really happened was that Jayden had already had a camping spot in the forest on the hill about a mile away from his home. He had smartly built a tiny hut for his comfort on the days he never went to school, too burdened by chores he did that were necessary to bring food into their home. He knew he could go there, and he had already even started planting yams and potatoes of his own. Remember, Jayden was industrious, so he had enjoyed his project, not knowing that this bamboo hut would now become his refuge from his wicked aunt Marlene. One day, a group of missionaries visiting the island came hiking up that hill where they discovered Jayden's neat little hut. They stayed with Jayden for a short time and learned of his sad story. When they went away, they promised that they would return to bring him food. However, they did what they thought was the next best thing for the little boy. They went straight to the police station and reported his whereabouts, as they remembered seeing his picture on a missing child flyer in town. While at the station describing Jayden's whereabouts, one of the missionaries, however, had other intentions and broke away from the group to return to the bamboo hut. Here he grabbed Jayden, whose screams were too far away to be heard, throwing him in his truck. He travelled with Jayden for what seemed like hours. Jayden was petrified, especially when he saw the sun had gone down and no lights entered the back of the van. When the man stopped, Jayden could smell the sea, and sure enough, when the doors opened, they were at the port, several miles away from Jayden's refuge in the forest. The missionary was speaking to a strange man by the dock who looked like a local fisherman, only he spoke something else that Jayden had never heard before. It sounded like music and drums, and then he heard one name that he had heard in school, and it all made sense. Haiti, the fisherman said, handing over thousands of dollars to the greedy missionary. Now alone with the fisherman, his language changed to English, where he told Jayden to calm down because he would join the others to another island. He explained to Jayden he would be going to work with a rich family who would take care of him from then on. Jayden was full of trepidation. In the bowels of the ship, many like him and even younger huddled together. After days of travelling, Jayden was starved and exhausted as he never slept. He felt the ship pull into dock. The sunlight finally penetrated the dark shadows below deck as the catchment threw open the latch door, and there stood the same man and others shouting for them to exit. One by one, the starving boys climbed up to the sunny deck and were led out to shore through the shallow waters by a hidden cove. Was this Jamaica? Jayden wondered as the land looked very similar, but yet so different. Soon, through the nearby bushes came some men who just started grabbing the boys who were too weak to put up a fight. All the younger ones went with some, and Jayden and the older boys were led away by others. They were all placed in the back of an open truck. Jayden looked around on the journey. By then he realized most of the men spoke French. He remembered because one of the men greeted the fisherman with bonjour, and he had learned that one word on a few occasions when he went to school in Jamaica. Soon Jayden and the other boys arrived at a beautiful large house, and out stepped two white people, a man and a woman, and with them were several other rough-looking men who just glared at the boys. Money exchanged hands, and Jayden was taken to where he would now call his home. As soon as they arrived, they were fed, and they were fed very well. Jayden looked around, thinking to himself, maybe this might be better than what he went through. His job, he later learned, was to help with the mining of precious gems. But remember, Jayden was industrious, and soon his hard-working nature was noted by the big rough men who liked how he was willing to travel into tiny spaces bravely to dig deeper than anyone else. Soon they relaxed with Jayden and told him about their operation. The mine was illegal and ran by an organization in Europe. They needed small boys because of the trenches, which were often too narrow for adults like them to enter. Soon Jayden worked his way up, and by the time he was 15 years old and quite a strapping boy, he was promoted to work in the house as a houseboy for the owners. They too loved his industrious nature, and soon Jayden had learned their foreign tongue as though it was his own. He sometimes thought about his family back in Jamaica, and when he did, he squeezed his pocket, where folded was the only thing he managed to take with him, the old picture of his beautiful mother. One day, Jayden's job was to fetch water for the mine workers to drink. He ran happily to the standpipe by the side of the house carrying a bucket, because although he was captive, Jayden was never beaten by anyone, and they fed him well. As he approached the well, he saw a lady bent over also collecting water. He thought to himself, she must be one of the maids. As she stood up and turned around, their eyes locked. Jayden dropped the bucket in his hand with a crash. He did not know whether to scream or run. He recognized those eyes. He knew that face. She equally froze as she searched his face as if it were a dream. Then she mouthed, "Jayden, is that you?" She spoke in English. In a whisper that barely escaped his mouth for fear of being overheard, Jayden said, "Mama?" She grabbed him and embraced him to her bosom in her tears and her cries that were as deep yet silent as her mouth opened to the sun as though she was about to scream to the God who brought back her son. Jayden's mother knew that at this moment she would leave this place with her boy because, unbeknown to Jayden, she was not captive but a favored and hired worker who was free to come and go. She grabbed her son's hand and headed to the large house where her bosses looked on with curiosity. After hearing their stories, the owners felt that fate had brought them together, and of course granted permission for her to remove him from their care. Their joy was overwhelming, but more was to come. Everything that happened afterward, the kidnapping, the journey across the sea, the years of toil and survival, rose in his mind like a storm as he slept on that first night in his mother's home. Yet for the first time in a long while, his dreams were peaceful. But his mother sat awake, knees drawn to her chest, staring at him through the dim glow of a kerosene lamp. She remembered the day she handed him to his father in desperation. She remembered the promise that he would have a better life. She remembered the years of silence. And now, here he was, thin, tall, strong, and far older in the eyes than any 15-year-old should be. Before dawn, she rose and began packing. She folded her few belongings, wrapped Jayden's worn photograph in cloth, and slipped it into her satchel. She moved with purpose, because the more she thought about what had been done to her son, the clearer her resolve became. When Jayden awoke, she was waiting at the table with warm cassava bread and tea. She did not smile. She looked determined, fierce in a quiet way. "Jayden," she said, touching his bruised but healing hands, "today we leave this country." His heart lurched. "Back to Jamaica?" "Back to truth," she corrected. "Back to the beginning." As they made their way through the dusty market streets to the bus station, Jayden noticed something he hadn't seen the day before: how people greeted his mother with respect. Some nodded, some called out her name in Creole. She was not simply a maid, she was trusted here, even valued. A woman who had carved a life out of very little, determined never again to be powerless. When they reached the bus, Jayden hesitated. "Mama, what if the miners come looking? What if they don't want me to leave?" She glanced at him with a calm, unshaken certainty. "They won't touch a child in my care. And if they try, then I will show them who they're dealing with." There was something in her tone that Jayden had never heard before. Strength, a mother's strength, the kind that could move mountains. Something that Jayden yearned for in his forlorn days in Jamaica. They reached the airport by sunset. As the plane lifted into the sky, Jayden pressed his forehead to the cool window pane. The sea stretched beneath them, blue and endless. For years the ocean had separated him from his real family, and now it carried him home. His mother squeezed his hand. "When we reach," she said softly, "we'll go straight to the police. Not the ones who look the other way, the ones who listen, the ones who will not sleep until your story is heard." Jayden nodded slowly, feeling the weight of possibilities. Justice had always felt like something distant, something meant for other children. But now, maybe it was possible. As the plane descended into Jamaica just after sunrise, the familiar warmth hugged his skin. The sight of the green hills made his chest tighten. Birds circled near the runway, cawing as if to welcome him back. His mother placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. "Today," she whispered, "we begin." And as they stepped onto the tarmac, Jayden felt it. A new chapter unfolding, one where the truth would rise from the shadows, and every step he took brought him closer to the justice he deserved. The journey had truly begun. Lots of lessons to be learned in Jayden's tale. You know, we tend to keep secrets in families for some reason. Not being open with our children about things that have happened in our families that has resulted in our families being divided. Sometimes it really is about sticking it through with your children rather than relying on other people to raise your child the way you would want your child to be raised. But often circumstances lead to these situations where children are in the care of people who do not necessarily love them the way they're supposed to be loved. We all know the true story of Jayden Smith, and we continue to say justice for that little boy in Jamaica who to this day has not reappeared. This twisted tale is my way of, in a way, finding some kind of conclusion, some kind of comfort in his loss. To explain away a missing child is something that nobody should ever have to do. And it is just so unfortunate that Jayden has to date not been found, and his family seems to have gone quiet about searching for Jayden. We're not certain about his biological mother, but her role is so pivotal in rescuing this child. So for those of you who are new to the Twisted Tales with Kay channel, please do not forget to hit the like, share, and subscribe button. And for those of you who are not new but continue to be my supporters, I wish you all the best for the Christmas season as I take a break until the new year in the creation of these Twisted Tales. A lot of them, as you know, are based on real life situations. And, you know, often I will add in some extra information and, you know, change things up. But you guys can connect the dots and want to know who are who, right? So yeah, big up yourself, my Twisted Tales fanatics, and have yourself a wonderful holiday season. From my household to yours, see you in 2026.